We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica Moore, and this is a webinar where we're going to deep dive into how to unlock digital generosity with some best practices. And those best practices are going to be delivered by Nathan. And Nathan, we can go to the next slide since we're talking about ourselves.
Sure.
Nathan is joining us from Next After, and I'm going to let him, actually, before you go, Nathan, I'm from Ministry Brands, and I've been here for 5 years. I am currently on our operational enablement team, and I basically handle a lot of the internal and external education for our giving platform. And I'm also learning our other software solutions as well, because we now offer an all-in-one suite of technology solutions. So lots of good stuff. You'll see a few of our products here today, but really today is about those best practices. And I'm going to allow Nathan to introduce himself and what he does so that you guys understand why what Nathan is saying is really important and matters and backed by research. So Nathan, go ahead.
Cool. Thanks, Jessica. I'm actually going to challenge the word best practices for a second, because it's actually it's a word we don't say at Next After, because what we're trying to do all the time is figure out what truly works to grow giving. Our mission is to decode what works in fundraising and giving and generosity, and then go equip as many people as we possibly can with what we're learning. And often what we find is that some of like the best practices that we've held on to for a long time are not always the best performing strategies. And so you'll see some of that throughout today. My name is Nathan Hill. I'm the vice president of what we call the Next After Institute. At Next After, we really do one primary thing, which is we help nonprofits grow their digital fundraising. And we work with a wide variety of nonprofits across lots of different verticals. We've worked with churches in the past. We've worked with parachurch ministries in the past, and a whole bunch of others. And, there's really three primary ways that we're trying to understand what works to grow giving. And the first piece is we're a research lab where we go conduct research studies to try to understand what are nonprofits doing today to try to grow giving. Looking at what other people are doing doesn't tell us what works, but it does give us clues and ideas of things that we can go put to the test. We do a lot of that testing, A/B testing, which we'll see a lot of today through our digital first agency, where we work day to day hands-on with 40 to 50 different nonprofit organizations, helping them put digital fundraising in a position to lead their fundraising programs. Everything we do is rooted in A/B testing and optimization. And then we're a training institute where we take everything we're learning and we go turn it into materials like this webinar today to go equip you with everything we're learning that works to grow giving. So I get the pleasure and the opportunity of leading that training institute piece, as well as a lot of the research that we're doing. So thrilled to be with you today, Jessica. Thrilled to be with you all today to talk about ways I think we can optimize year-end giving over the course of the next 31 days.
Yeah. It's not the end. It's not the finish line. Giving Tuesday just happened, but we are going to push through and push on. And I think that this is the ideal time to get this information and implement as much of this as you can in the next, couple weeks or so. So I'm going to just completely give you the reins, Nathan. Nathan's really driving this webinar today. We're just going to soak up as much of this information as possible. I will interject a little bit here and there, but truly this is a gift from Next After. So take notes. You will receive a recording of this webinar in an email. So if you missed something, that's okay. You feel free to ask us in the chat and we'll try to follow up with you, but you will also receive a recording of the webinar as well as some resources here in the next few days. So without further ado, Nathan, dive right in.
Let's go. All right. First question for everyone. Get some practice using the chat. Many of you have kind of sounded off and let us know where you're zooming in from, which is wonderful. I love seeing how far reaching this whole idea of how do we grow generosity together is reaching. And we've got people in Jamaica on the call today, which is really fun. Let me know in the chat what your answer is to this question. How was your Giving Tuesday, which was just 2 days ago? Number one, did you meet your goal? Did you not meet the goal, or you didn't participate, or maybe you don't even know what it is? Let me know in the chat. I just kind of want to take the pulse and see where everyone's at. Joy says that they did not participate in Giving Tuesday. Same with Linda, same with Ann. Lots of people not participating. Barb missed the goal. I'm sorry about that, Barb. There's hope for you. We'll get to that. Lots of folks not participating. I've kind of noticed this is a trend this year in particular. I don't know, Jessica, if you've seen the same thing, but it certainly feels like, I mean, Giving Tuesday is rapidly growing. Like that's undeniable. But it feels like
churches seem to feel like they shouldn't participate or it's not their place, which I disagree. We did a webinar about this a couple years ago, really encouraging churches to take advantage of it. But I think culturally, it's not something that churches usually participate in.
Yeah. And I get it. I know a lot of the mentality is like, I have to have such a big social media reach or something to see results, which isn't always true. There's other ways you can kind of leverage it. But I do have good news for everyone. If you feel like, we tried Giving Tuesday, we didn't hit our goal, or, you didn't participate and you feel like maybe you missed out. We'll get to some of the stats and the benchmarking about, when funds typically come in the year-end season. So we'll address that. So hold on to that thought for a moment. I see a comment from Linda. The issue is everyone does it. It's overwhelming to see the million emails and Facebook posts. I am right there with you. It was overwhelming. My dad, who doesn't think about fundraising at all, sent me a text randomly, and he never texts me about things related to fundraising. So it was like kind of out of the blue. He's like, my inbox is overwhelmed today. Almost like he wasn't blaming me, but it was like, you kind of know about this stuff. Why is this happening? So it's certainly a growing sentiment. Let's dive in though. You're here likely because you care about year-end fundraising. You see the potential in it. Maybe you've seen significant growth in it year over year. You're trying to figure out ways to continue to grow it. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about just why should you care so much about year-end fundraising. I know it matters, but let's look at some of the data around it. As we look at all sorts of different benchmark reports across the industry, looking at a wide variety of nonprofits, from churches to other ministries to all sorts of things, there's a bunch of different benchmark reports, and they all report something kind of in this range, that in 2022, 17 to 31% of online revenue came in during the year-end season, somewhere in that range. Now, some of these benchmarks are looking at all of Q4. Some of them are looking just at December. The way that we typically look at this, and when we look at our specific, the organizations we work with every day, we call them digital first organizations because they're actively investing in making digital channels, digital communication as sort of the primary driver of their programs. These organizations saw 37% of their online revenue come in during the year-end season last year. We define that period for this benchmark purpose as November 15th through the end of the year. So it's a 45-day window where 37% of online revenue comes in for the year, which is pretty remarkable and puts kind of everything in perspective to show there's such high motivation. We know this intrinsically, but there is such high motivation for people to find opportunities to give and to be generous during this season. What's really interesting is the level of participation that different organizations have in the year-end season. We conducted a study a couple of years ago where we found, looking at organizations' communication strategies, 37% of nonprofits were sending nothing at all, zero communication to their postal donors, people who gave to them through direct mail or offline channels. Now, on the other side of that, the number is smaller, but it's probably a little bit more striking, at least to me, because we work in the online space. 13% of nonprofits send absolutely nothing to their online donors during the year-end season, despite how easy and cheap it is to just send an email to your existing donors. Still 13% sent absolutely nothing. So we have this huge opportunity for growing funds, yet we have so many nonprofits that choose just not to participate. And as we've just said, our inboxes were overwhelmed on Giving Tuesday. So if you're not participating, others are, and people are actively looking for a way to give back and to be generous and to give of their money to make a meaningful impact on something that they care about. So if you're not participating, you can't expect that same level of giving. So we've got to come to the table to play, if you will. There's a common misconception, and this is what we're talking about with Giving Tuesday, of where the funds typically come in, because again, Giving Tuesday is rapidly growing. It grows year over year over year over year, and it's really remarkable the amount of funds that are being generated on that day alone. I haven't seen the full report on this past Tuesday yet, but I'm sure it's bigger than the year before. But with as much hype as Giving Tuesday gets, there's this misconception that kind of comes with that. Well, Giving Tuesday must be the thing, the day where the funds come in. The reality is that it is a significant day, but it is not the whole picture. So if you didn't participate or you didn't meet your goal, there's still plenty of opportunity and plenty of hope for you over the course of the rest of the season. Looking at our own clients that we work with day in and day out, what we saw last year, 2022, was that Giving Tuesday brought in 6% of online year-end revenue, which again is a lot. That's 6% of the season in one single day. It's significant. But when we look at the last day of the year, we saw that 16% came in on December 31st. You go look at the full last week of the year after Christmas, 46% of online revenue came in during that last week. Now, we love to look at conversion rates and percent increases and percent decreases. So to put it in that language, if that's how your brain works, that means there's 166% more revenue at stake on the last day of the year than on Giving Tuesday. And there's 667% more revenue at stake during the last week of the year than on Giving Tuesday alone. So as brilliant fundraisers, as all of us are, we need to be putting our efforts on that last week of the year and setting kind of the right priority as we plan our communication. And so as you're thinking about the next 31 days, yes, we need to be doing some cultivation kind of work over the next couple of weeks, but we really need to make sure our focus is on activating potential donors during that last week when giving is often so high and motivation is so high. What's really fascinating is to look at the breakdown of how nonprofits choose to participate in these two kind of key giving windows. This is from a couple of years ago. I think this is 2021 data, if memory serves me right. But 20% of organizations send mail and 57% of organizations send an email during the full week of Giving Tuesday. When you look at the same numbers or the same stats for the last week of the year, the numbers don't really change that much. 18% sent mail during the last week of the year. 58% sent email during the last week of the year. They're basically the same numbers, which means, and looking at all the other kind of data we were capturing around it, there's really minimal difference in how nonprofits treat Giving Tuesday versus the last week of the year, despite this incredible revenue chasm, if you will. There's such a remarkable difference between the two giving windows. So this is not going to be the most mind-blowing strategy, but we have to come to the table and participate if we want to see that level of revenue come in during the last week of the year, which leads us
exciting. This is like exciting to me listening to this. Okay, we haven't missed the boat. We're still, this is encouraging, right? I hope everyone's encouraged at this point.
You should be. That's what I'm aiming for. We're all in this together. We've got so much opportunity and so much hope ahead. And that's really then leads us to our next kind of key question. Our primary driving question behind the rest of the time we're going to spend together today. How do we get the most out of that last week of the year when revenue is so incredibly high and there's so much opportunity? We're going to look at three key areas. We're going to look at emails that you can be sending. We're going to look at your website and different ways that you can leverage your website to drive more of the right traffic at the right time. And then we're going to look at your donation page to see what are the ways that we can optimize the page in order to lead to more people saying yes on the page. And let's start with your emails. The really key concept, key driving principle behind the emails that you'll send during the last week of the year is this. We want to increase urgency without necessarily rehashing all the reasons to give. Oftentimes when we talk about building out an email campaign or even a single email appeal, we talk about your value proposition and how do you communicate why someone should give, not just assuming they're ready to give, but communicating why they should give all throughout the donation process. But when it comes to the last week of the year, oftentimes the most effective strategies is to be a little bit shorter, more to the point. Don't rehash everything, because ideally you're communicating over the course of the season what are those kind of core reasons why someone should give as you prepare for 2024. So as we talk to different nonprofits and organizations about year-end communication, this is a snapshot of our email fundraising timeline for the year-end season. I don't recommend that everybody send 17 emails, which is actually what's baked into this timeline. If you've got a super advanced program, awesome, you can do that. If you've only ever sent a couple of emails during the year-end season, maybe aim for 4 or 5. Start small, and then you can scale up. But typically, these emails get broken down into 3 main types of communication. One is priming, or another word might be cultivation. This is sending content that's not attached to a donation ask or a donation appeal. It's helping people understand why they should trust you with their donation when an appeal comes later. It's communication that's trying to help people see the impact that's being made through giving to you without asking them for a donation right then and there. So it might be surveys, it might be kind of free content offers, it might just purely be a thank you email, oftentimes around Thanksgiving, sending out a dedicated thank you. If you didn't do that, go for it this week or next week. Still say thank you. It's always okay to say thank you. Sharing stories of impact and testimonials and all that sort of stuff to really help people feel and see the meaningful impact that you are doing on a daily basis and that they are doing when they give. Secondly is appeals, and these are directly asking for donations. There's a wide variety of ways that you can approach that throughout the season. We're not going to unpack all of those right now. We're going to focus on what I call the closer emails, which is those last few emails that you send during the last week of the year when urgency to give is so high and motivation to give is so high. How do we maximize that? But they're making the assumption that we've done some work to warm people up, prime people, and help people already understand why they should give. And then we get to the point of closing the deal. When I think about these emails, I think about a guy named Bobby Jenks, who is the closer on the 2005 Chicago White Sox World Series championship team. This was the 1 year that I cared about the MLB and baseball in general. I basically started that season. I said, I'm going to get into watching baseball. Like, it's kind of fun. I always kind of enjoyed playing it. I'm going to get into it this year. And my grandpa was like a diehard Chicago White Sox fan. So my team was the White Sox by default. And it was the best. I see someone saying, go Bobby. I love it. That was the best year to be a White Sox fan. And then at the end of that season, I mean, you're in the World Series games, they're going into extra innings. And you just knew that when Bobby Jenks came out to the mound, Ozzie Guillen would walk out and he'd talk to the pitcher that's out there. He'd turn to the bullpen and he'd call for the big guy like this. And you knew Bobby Jenks was coming in. And sorry, we lost. I think we lost somebody who's a Cubs fan here. Sorry about that, Justin. But they'd call for Bobby Jenks. He'd come in, he'd throw a bunch of fastballs, he'd strike everybody out, win the game, done deal. If you put Bobby Jenks in at the beginning of the game, you don't see the same results. He's going to strike people out, but that arm is going to tire out real quick, and then people are going to start getting hits. And a closer is not nearly as effective at the beginning of the game as they are at the end of the game. It's the same with these emails. You can't just take these and go pop them into a December 1st email or the first week of December. They're only effective when urgency is high and motivation to give is high. All that context being said, let's look at a couple examples. This email, very simply, I call the deadline email. And what we're trying to do with the deadline email is remind donors and potential donors of the impending deadline to give without, again, rehashing all the core reasons why someone should give. This example, I think, is a fun one. Granted, I'll show you another example that looks a little bit closer to what I'd recommend you send. But I like some things going on in this email from the Special Olympics, because everything they're doing is either increasing the incentive to give or it's increasing the urgency to give. So everything being highlighted on your screen in green is an incentive to give. An incentive is not the core reason why someone should give, but it is a reason why someone might give more rather than less, or give now rather than later. So in this opportunity, there's a chance for your gift to be tripled. They have a matching opportunity. You give $10 today, it's actually the same as giving $30 because someone has generously offered to go match your gift. So they're increasing the incentive. Triple, 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 triple. It's all over the place. Even in the URL at the bottom, it says specialolympics.org/triple your gift incentive. The other side of this, the other side of the equation is urgency, because almost every other word in this email is trying to drive urgency. You have a clear deadline talking about giving before midnight tomorrow. You've got this big giant countdown clock right in the middle that's showing you how much time you have left. You've got these kind of three different lines. Give now, give now, give now. Your donation will do all this more, but only if you give before midnight tomorrow. So it's driving urgency and incentive all across the board, which is really what we're trying to do. There's probably more authentic ways that you can do that, but that's really what we're aiming for, is those kind of two key factors. This experiment example is a lot closer to what I'd recommend that you actually send. It looks a little bit more authentic, looks a little bit more genuine, comes from an actual human being. And those strategies tend to be much more impactful with getting someone to trust you with their donation. But what's interesting about these two emails is that they're both effectively doing the same thing, but version A has a lot more value proposition copy than version B. You might actually say that version B, the quick reminder style email, has 32% less value proposition copy explaining why someone should give. It's more focused on the opportunity to give right now. The deadline is coming. Here's the incentive to give. We need your help right now. It's not rehashing all the core reasons to give. And what it led to was actually a 30% increase in people actually giving. So when it comes to those emails you're sending close to the deadline, we want to be short. We want to be to the point. We want to communicate the urgency. We want to communicate the incentives to give without rehashing all of the details about why someone should give in the first place. So that's email closer number one. Let's look at closing email number two. I call this one the reminder. And you might say, didn't we just send a reminder? This is a reminder of the reminder, essentially. It's a personal email to make sure that they didn't miss the deadline email that you sent. You might actually send both of these in the same day. If you send that deadline email the morning of December 31st, you might send this email at 9:30, 10 o'clock p.m. on December 31st to say, hey, I sent you this thing earlier. Just want to make sure you didn't miss it. Because sometimes people are busy. They just need a kind reminder. I'll show you a couple examples here. This one is a great one from our friends at World Concern. And you can see the timestamp. This is a several-year-old email at this point. This strategy continues to work because this is how people use the inbox. This is how people use email on a day-to-day basis. We're not trying to be clever marketers. We're trying to be genuine people in the inbox. And so what Jacinta does in this email is she includes a short little note. This is being sent at 10:06 p.m. on December 31st. It says, Pam, just wanted to send you a quick note to make sure that you received this email. I don't want you to miss out on the chance to double your gift. God bless, Jacinta. And then down below, it's a forward style email. She includes the previous email that had been sent at 9:45 a.m. on December 31st. So that morning, that has a little bit more information. Not a lot, because again, they're not rehashing everything. It has a little bit more information. This is the natural behavior that we have in the inbox. If you're working on a project or something and you're waiting to hear from a colleague, or you sent a family member or a friend an email and you haven't heard back from them, what do we typically do? We don't typically write a brand new email. We typically go to our inbox, we hit reply on that old email, and we send it again, and we say, hey, did you see this? I was waiting to hear from you. This is what it looks like to be a human in the inbox, which is why it's effective. It's the expected behavior. This is an interesting experiment that's putting that to the test, where this was sent on Giving Tuesday, not 2 days ago, but a year before. They sent a resend email in the evening of Giving Tuesday. It was basically just resending the original Giving Tuesday appeal that they sent out. You can see it's very long form, articulating all these different reasons why someone should give, showing a few little testimonial stories of impact. What they tested was sending this kind of forward style email where you've got a short note, granted it's still 2-3 paragraphs, but a short note up top talking about the opportunity to give, reminding people of the opportunity to give. And then down below, they included the whole original email, but it's sent in that more kind of authentic way, saying, hey, I sent you this. I just wanted to remind you that the deadline is coming. And what they saw when they tested these side by side, which means half of their donors are getting version A, the other half are getting the forward style email being sent at the same time. What they saw was that people who received this forward style email were 73% more likely to give.
Wow.
So
That's
I think the evidence is clear here. This is the effective approach to really communicate in an authentic way with someone in the inbox. Jessica, this is the best thing about this kind of partnership in this webinar is we've got all this data and these strategies and ideas. You have the tools that make this stuff happen. Do you want to talk about how they can make this happen?
Yes, absolutely. So many of you joining us today are already within the Ministry Brands family of products, but if you have our Amplify People product module, or if you've got one of our CHMS solutions, you already have baked in a mass contact module. And within that, you can create emails, and then you can even schedule emails out. So as you're putting together these thoughtful campaigns all the way through the timeline that Nathan discussed, whether you're going with 5 emails or 17 emails, you can create them all in one shot and then schedule those out throughout the season. So yes, it is November 31st, but it is still not too late. And this will save you some time, effort, energy. We know that it's only going to get busier from now until the end of the year. And so please, please lean into this functionality, this capability. It's efficient and it's going to save you some time and headaches. So if you are not already within the Ministry Brands family of products and you are interested in exploring the CHMS option, the CHMS stands for Church Management Software. If you are interested in exploring our options in that regard, that's why my friend Austin's here. So you can send Austin a chat directly to him if you'd like, or you can just jump into the chat or send us a Q&A and say, hey, I want to hear a little bit more about this particular product. So that's really all I wanted to highlight there. Obviously, there's a ton more functionality within the CHMS product, but relevant to Nathan's strategies, this is going to be a super helpful tool for you.
Love it. I love it. I will say too, and I probably should have said this up front, I'm going to throw a bunch of ideas out there. We've already seen several ideas. There's going to be a lot more. I don't expect that you can go implement every single one of these things, but I would certainly, as we're going through, jot down 1 or 2 things that you're going to commit to doing and setting up over the next couple of weeks. You're going to see impactful results just by a handful of things. Sometimes just small changes can make the most meaningful impact. Don't feel like you've got to do everything to quote unquote do it right. Choose a couple of things that you can manage, that you can kind of bite off over the course of the next couple of weeks and make sure those happen. I think that will serve you well. If you've got questions about anything we've covered that you want to kind of come back to, feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A and we'll come back to them at the very end. If you need to interrupt me at some point because something I said doesn't make any sense, just put that in the chat and I'll watch those things. But we've covered email. There's so much more we could cover related to email. But I want to move on to talk about your website for a little bit, because there are plenty of things that you can do on your website to drive more of the right people to your donation page at the right time. Some of these tactics are going to be most impactful if you have larger amounts of traffic, but even if you have small traffic, just some opportunities and reminders on your site to show people the chance to give may make a meaningful difference. Our kind of key concept here as it relates to how do you make the most of the last week of the year on your website is to just make it simple and make it easier for people to find where to give. That doesn't mean remove all the copy, just put a big button and have a form. That actually might make it harder for someone to give if they don't see the reasons why they should give. But we want to streamline the process and use as many opportunities as we can to show people the opportunity to give. So we'll look at a bunch of different tactics and ideas. Jessica.
I'm going to interrupt you super quick, speaking specifically to our audience here today. During Christmas time, sometimes this is the first time people are going to church or the only time in the year they're going to church, and your website is your virtual front door. Bearing that in mind, there is opportunity there. I would venture to say that there's possibly more website traffic around this time of the year for churches as people are trying to figure out where they want to go, if they're starting or if they're just going for Christmas Eve service. I recognize, I'm just going to call it out, that's not an ideal time to ask people for money. But your website is a much more gentle way to not ask for money, but reflect the culture of generosity at your church. I think that's important. I think people do look at that. I look at that when I'm exploring church websites, which I don't do very often. But if I do, I'm looking for that. So keeping that in mind, specific to our churches here today, I think these are wonderful things that you can implement easily and quickly that will make a big impact specifically for this time of the year, in addition to year-end giving.
Great word. Let's jump in and look at some of those kinds of tactics that you can use. And again, I mean, you're going to have to sort of massage these things and make them apply in your context. So you may see some different like countdown clocks and some language that you say, well, that's not church language. That's okay. That's where, copywriting skills come into play and all that sort of thing. But take the principles for what they're worth, and I'll try to call those out as we go. There's a lot of different opportunities within your existing website where you can call attention to something. And in this case, it's the opportunity to give at year end. And so typically what those opportunities look like, you've got donation options in the navigation. You've got something we'd call just a sticky bar, which would just stick to the top of the page or might stick to the bottom of the page. It's a great way to call out some kind of specific promotion, particularly if it's for like a limited time kind of offer. You've got homepage ads, which don't have to look like ads. It's just a placement on the page where you're promoting something, and it should feel like native content. We'll look at one of those. You've got pop-ups, which maybe you're averse to pop-ups, but timed at the right time, making sure they're not super invasive or showing up every time someone loads a page. They can be effective and meaningful without being a nuisance and an annoyance. And then you've got slide outs, very similar to a pop-up, but they go just slide out right out of the side of the page. Great way to call someone's attention to an offer as they're scrolling through a page or maybe reading through an article. Let's start by looking at the navigation. And what I want to do in each one of these is look at an experiment, an A/B test within each one, so you can see not only can you just install the tactic, but you can also do lots of things to improve it and optimize it. Let's start very simply just with the navigation. You probably have a button on your website that looks something like this. I will tell you, we spent some time going through a lot of different ministry brands, customers doing an audit to look at the donation experience. And we did find in many cases, sometimes it was really confusing to figure out where the give option is. Sometimes it was, in a couple cases, it was under an option called worship, which I understand that giving is an act of worship, but that might not be the first place that I think to look for a donation option. So we want to make it clear where the opportunity to give is. You may say that this kind of ghost button style is very clear. I particularly love it because I have like a high aesthetic and I think it looks really nice. However, just because I think it looks nice doesn't mean it's the most impactful tactic. And just calling the button out in a big green color to make sure it just jumps right off the page and is visible, in this case led to a 28% increase in people actually clicking through and going to the donation page. Small change you might not think would make such a significant difference, but it's very impactful in getting more of the right people to the page at the right time. So make sure that you use clear language and that visually it stands out in the navigation. Another experiment to show a very similar tactic. In this case, I'm sure you can find the donate link in the navigation, but it's treated in the same way as everything else in the navigation. And this kind of gray font color doesn't stand out at all. What they tested was calling it out in a purple button. So high contrast, pops right out of the navigation. In this case, and I can't guarantee this result for everyone. However, what they saw was a 190% increase, not in clicks, but in people actually choosing to give, which is pretty remarkable. Again, can't guarantee the result of a specific experiment, but there's the opportunity that you might see this kind of a significant change just by making it clear where to go, especially when motivation to give is high and people are actively looking for the opportunity to give and to give back and be generous. So again, key takeaway, just make it easy. Make it simple to find your donate button in your navigation, clear language with clearly visible links and buttons. Let's talk about your homepage and homepage ads specifically. Again, I don't want you to plaster your website in a bunch of ads that just look obnoxious. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is draw attention in a meaningful way. So that it may not look something like this, but I want to show you this example. This is a real ad that an organization was running during year end. It says, double your gift, help parents with their toughest challenges find out more. What they saw when they ran this ad is really interesting to see the results over time. And it's just to show you how much motivation to give increases when you get to that last week of the year. Early in December 6th through the 13th, they were running the same ad. I saw a 1.1% conversion rate, which is the amount of people that are seeing it and then ultimately giving. When you got to that like last week of the year timeframe, this isn't even on December 31st. This is only up through the 27th. That conversion rate jumped up to 4.6. That's like a 300% increase in the likelihood that someone is going to give from the first week of December to the third week. So you can tell that motivation to give is ramping up. And sometimes we just need to make sure that people see that opportunity to give. Now, when you call out the opportunity to give on your homepage and on your website, again, I don't want it to just look like, a typical ad you might see here and there that people just scroll past and ignore. But lean into copy, lean into your messaging in a meaningful way. Version A here from this organization, they have this call out on their homepage that says, this Christmas, change a life, shop now. And in this case, you might be confused about what you're actually being called to do. What does shopping now have to do with changing a life? Is that a way to give? I'm not really looking to shop for something. Maybe I already did my shopping. I don't need a goat, but I'm looking to give. Version B, they added a whole lot of clarity just by adding a little bit of copy. Oftentimes we have a tendency, I think, to lean into sort of the branding of a campaign or the branding of the season and miss how important the details of the copy are in exchange for beautiful branding. What they tested was this. It says you can change a life with a gift, and it gives all the context that you need. This Christmas, give a gift that can meet a critical need of a child or family living in poverty. When a family receives a goat, education, water, or some other tangible solution, their lives are changed for years to come. Change a life by giving a gift. Version A, I don't have a lot of clarity. Unless I already have the context, I don't really know what you're asking me to do. Version B, it's clear and apparent what you're asking me to do and why it's meaningful. Why should I give? Because I can go meet a critical need of a child or family living in poverty. This led to a 35% increase in donations. So throw out the idea that people don't read online, because they really do. And you need copy to help the people that are going to give to you understand how much to give and the impact that can actually be made when they donate. You can also do things like this. This is a sticky bar example. Version A here and version B use this big high contrast color sticky bar, sits at the top of the page, asks you to donate. The difference here is version B uses a little bit more specificity. Version A says, help the International Mission Board finish the year strong. It's a good thing. Version B says, help missionaries by giving a gift towards Lottie Moon today. It's still asking you to do the same thing, but it's giving a little bit more specificity about who you're helping and how you can make that kind of an impact. And it led to this 16% increase in donations. So we need copy, and we need to be specific about the impact that can be made when someone gives. You can also do things like this. This is still a sticky bar, but now it's sitting at the bottom of the page. This is actually calling out a number of donations that they're looking for per hour. I don't necessarily expect that you can go implement this right now on your pages, but what's really interesting is the difference in the copy from version A to version B. Version A is a very straightforward ask. It says your donation will be matched dollar for dollar thanks to a $30,000 gift from the board of directors. Version B uses a tactic we'd call communal language that invites someone in. It feels warm, it feels personal, it feels authentic. It's inviting someone into a community of people who are choosing to be generous to go impact something meaningful. You've been such a great friend by staying connected through CaringBridge. Don't you feel just like warm and fuzzy just reading that first sentence? If it's not too much to ask, would you consider giving today so that our board of directors can match your gift? Same call to action. Both of them talk about the matching opportunity, but this communal language approach led to a 45% increase in people choosing to click through and go consider making a gift. So when we write our copy, yes, we need copy, we need specificity, but we also need to apply this kind of human approach to our copy, especially in the context of church giving, to help people feel personally connected to the impact that can be made when they give.
Nathan, do you mind answering one quick question that's in the Q&A? Carrie asked, our pregnancy center website is for both clients and donors. We've tried to keep it client-centric, but that means that our give button is a bit hidden. What are your thoughts about highlighting the donate now button when it's on a website for clients too?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a pretty common issue where oftentimes you're serving two audiences, if not more, where you've got donors and then you've got the people that the donors are giving to go serve. I think it's okay to have that present. You may play with kind of the calls to action on the page. Maybe you have two that are kind of prioritized and highlighted, but I mean, we're trying to optimize, in my case, for giving and for donations. And if that donate button is hidden, it's hard to find. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think it's any secret to your clients as well that you're funded by donations. I don't see a world where they would be offended by that. If they can give, great. If they can't, that's okay, right? So I don't think that I don't necessarily feel like it would be inappropriate to have it more visible.
I totally agree. I think the time that it might become inappropriate is if you're sending these kind of batch emails to everybody with no nuance or context as to their relationship with you. But if it's in your navigation on your website, that's okay. You're not actively putting it in somebody's face and trying to get them to donate when they're not in a position to. So anyway, you can nuance that in your kind of email communication. Primary takeaway, use prime real estate on your homepage to increase traffic to your donation page. You can use all those different kind of little tactics to try to boost the number of people clicking through and actually giving. We'll kind of go rapid fire through the next couple ones of these. You can use pop-ups on your page. You can use time pop-ups like this, where they pop up maybe 10 seconds after someone's been on the page. And they might say something like this: time is running out, with a countdown clock to drive urgency. The difference here is just having this matching opportunity in version B. having an incentive to give like that can be really meaningful in getting more people to consider giving. In this case, presenting that matching opportunity, even in just a couple words, led to a 56% increase in clicks. And so you can call that kind of thing out with a pop-up. You can use an exit intent pop-up, which is a different type of pop-up, but basically it shows up when you move your cursor to exit or to go back. Is when it pops up and says, hey, before you go, would you consider something? This example, I think, is really a wonderful experiment to show the impact of giving specificity in your call to action as well. Version A says, before you go, will you consider something? Ultimately, they're asking you to become a recurring donor, in this case, to CaringBridge, become a CaringBridge partner. And what they saw when they ran this test, this says, you can see the call to action at the end, would you consider joining 328 fellow supporters and becoming a CaringBridge partner? They're giving more specificity to that community that you're inviting someone into. And that level of social proof, if you will, led to a 12% increase in people giving. So you can try using these pop-ups, but also test your language to help people feel a part of something meaningful using something like social proof, showing how many people have given, how many people are actively giving, maybe on a recurring basis through a partner program or something like that. Use pop-ups to drive new donation page traffic, use them to capture existing visitors that are on your site, and then ultimately to remind people to give their gift or complete their gift this season. You can use things like in-article ads. If you have any kinds of like blogs or things that are, maybe they're unpacking a sermon or they're unpacking a particular topic you've been talking about as a church, you can use some different placements inside of those pages to draw attention to the opportunity to give. This experiment is an interesting one. Version A is simply asking someone in a slide out to sign up for their newsletter. They're just trying to capture emails, stay connected with people. Version B, what they decided to do was get rid of the slide out and replace it with this Dear Reader ad, which sits at the bottom of the article. It has a longer form donation appeal telling you about the opportunity to give and the impact that can be made when you give. Version A still had an opportunity to give after you signed up for the newsletter. Version B, moving directly towards that donation appeal through a Dear Reader ask, saw this dramatic 600+% increase in donor conversion. So don't assume that just because someone is on an article page doesn't mean they're not ready to give. There's actually tremendous opportunity to put an opportunity to give back in front of them, especially when they're receiving something so valuable from you in terms of content. So use these kind of Dear Reader in article ads. One example that you've probably seen out in the wild many times is on the Wikipedia site. I'm not advocating you go install this on your website, but just to show you, we're not just making these things up. It's not just with these types of organizations. This is kind of across the board. These are some of the tactics that are really impactful to drive attention to the opportunity to give and drive more revenue during that last week of the year. You can follow along with all of the things Wikipedia is testing. They publish all their experiments afterwards. It's really fun. So you can go check those things out. Big takeaway, again, add a Dear Reader article to your ads or to your articles, to your blogs, and if you have any news kinds of things, updates, any of those kind of content pages on your website, you can add these Dear Reader placements during that last week of the year and even throughout the season, quite honestly. This one sometimes can be a little bit more tricky to implement on the technical side of things, but we call it a homepage takeover, where essentially the last 2 days of the year, instead of your typical homepage, you can take it over with essentially a donation page, more or less, so that the first thing that someone sees when they come to your website is this opportunity to give and to give before the deadline. Long form page has the full donation offer, donation appeal on the page, and has a donation form right on the page as well. In this case, using that type of an approach instead of just this big ad that you see on the left led to a 31% increase in donations. So the larger point here is make sure you use prime real estate, again, to show people that opportunity to give. A takeover of your homepage like this can be really effective during those last kind of 24 hours of your campaign. There's also lots of things that you can consider and test and try inside of the copy. And, what's the best way to start the conversation? Is it with a very value-focused headline, like help bring the hope of the gospel to the lost? Or is it more conversational to say, hey, before you continue, I just wanted a moment of your time, and then move into more conversational copy. You can test the length of the copy. You can test having a button up top to start my gift. You can add countdown clocks, all sorts of things, and all the specificity examples we talked about as well. So you can get creative with how you install this and implement it. But again, larger takeaway, use this kind of homepage takeover during those last couple days of the year. And it sounds like, Jessica, you can do all this stuff in your existing tools, which again is amazing.
You can. Some of these options are going to be included kind of out of the box, but we do offer support as well if you need help getting these things set up. And if you don't already have a website option that you love, we actually have a few options depending on your price point. So we'd love to hear from you either way, whether you need help or some guidance, or you want to implement some of these things and just need a little bit of direction, or if you're looking to purchase a website option, we are here for you. So just get in the chat and let us know, or in the Q&A, and we will point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, let's round things out here by talking about the donation page for a little bit, because we haven't even talked about that. We're talking about how do we get people to show up from email? How do we drive the right traffic on our website? But then when we ultimately get to the donation page, there's a lot that we could talk about. We're going to try to condense it down into 4 or 5 quick ideas. High level concept here, though, we want to emphasize the incentives to give on our donation page, and we want to increase urgency throughout. Again, these are not the core reasons to give. These are reasons why you might give more rather than less, or give now rather than later. What typically happens when it comes to our donation page during any kind of like high urgency campaign, like the year-end season, is you may have all these different channels, whether you're running ads or maybe you're sending out letters in the mail to your people. Maybe you've got something dropped in the chair backs that's talking about the opportunity to give. You're sending out emails, you got stuff on your website. What often happens is all these channels point back to just the regular old donation page, the one you've worked so hard on throughout the years to try to make it the best you possibly can. And what typically happens is you're talking in these different channels about why someone should give right now during year end. But when they come to the regular old donation page, you experience this kind of feeling of whiplash where you were talking about this thing over here, the year end opportunity to give, all the things happening in 2024 that we're trying to gear up for, but I see nothing about that on the donation page. So am I in the right place to make the impact on the thing you just told me to give to? I'm not really sure. And if I'm not sure when I get to the page, I'm probably going to leave. Maybe I'll come back later, but probably not. I'm probably going to bail altogether. So we need to make sure that we have a continuous experience from all of our communication channels through all the copy on our donation page. With a cohesive year-end donation page. Maybe this just means you update your primary donation page for the season, or maybe it means you have a dedicated page that you've built separately that all these different kind of channels point to. But we'll look at a few different tactics that you can go implement on this page to make it a bit more year-end in focus that can lead to more conversions. Very simply, and again, this isn't going to blow anybody's mind, but make sure in your headline that you talk about the year-end opportunity. In version A here, you can see the original headline of one of these pages said, "You can help secure a better future." I don't know what that means, but I really know that I'm in the right place if you tell me, make your year-end gift to our organization or to our church today. That's very clear. It helps me know I'm in the right place to give my year-end gift, just like you told me to do in the letter that I got in the mail, or the sign that I saw in the lobby, or the email I got. We want to align all of that messaging. In this case, it led to a 10% increase in donations, and a 10% increase in donations on the donation page can happen real quick in terms of giving and revenue. You can use things like sticky bars even on your donation page. We call this tactic the humanized sticky bar, where you put a face on there and they have a little bit of language talking about either an incentive to give or just reiterating the primary reasons why someone should give. In this case, it led to a 110% increase in donations by increasing sort of the humanity of the donation offer, the donation appeal. Connecting someone with a person with a face to increase that sense of authenticity can go a long way, even on a donation page, which is pretty remarkable. Countdown clocks. These are probably familiar to you, but just to show you some data around it, adding this countdown clock in the last few days of the year led to a 61% increase in donations, because it put front and center that you need to make your gift right now if you're going to give a gift, because you're not going to remember 3 days from now to get your gift in time. So it drives that sense of urgency. One important point to note about countdown clocks is when to implement them. Because if you turn a countdown clock on your donation page today, it's going to say that there are 31 days left to make that year-end gift, which does not help drive urgency. In fact, it might harm your results. If you track the kind of the blue line and the orange line here, the orange line is the page that has a countdown clock. The blue line is a page that has no countdown clock. And for the vast majority of this campaign, this is not year end, but it's during someone's end of fiscal year campaign. The vast majority of this campaign, the blue line that has no countdown clock is outperforming the orange line that does have one, which means that the countdown clock was actually harming results up until that last week. And then they flip. So during that last week is when the countdown clock is actually impactful and is increasing urgency rather than telling someone, you got plenty of time, don't worry about it. That's what's happening in the first 3 weeks. When you implement it in the last week is when it actually drives urgency and helps. Progress bars, installing these on your page to help people see clearly the opportunity to give, how much you're asking people to give over the course of the season. It adds some sort of like bandwagon effect to the page as well to see, oh, we're at 70% of the goal. I can help get us a little bit further. And so that can drive people to give too. In this case, it led to a 20% increase in revenue per visitor. This is an interesting tactic to play with, not just having a revenue goal, but even a number of donors goal. You know, if in version A, the goal is $100,000, I have to give $1,000 or more to see that progress bar move just 1%. In version B, you're just asking me to give what I can, and I can help us get closer to the goal when it's focused on a number of donors or a number of donations. In that case, it led to a 25% increase. So that is something that you can consider as you communicate your goals during the season. 2 more quick tactics before we wrap up. Incentives, if you have them, don't just put it in your copy just like a whisper on the page. Make sure people know about them. Version A and version B both have the opportunity for your gift to be doubled. They both talk about it and show you it in the progress bar. Version B calls it out in a big giant orange banner that you can't miss, and it says a generous donor will match your donation today, and it led to a 44% increase in giving because it's very clear. You cannot miss it. So don't assume people know about it. Make sure it's absolutely clear. The last tactic for you is something to consider for people that might be giving on a mobile device. We've tested this once, so I'll put that disclaimer out there, but it's something that would be interesting to test again, that our teams are planning to test more this season as well, is having this start my gift for a mobile user. Sometimes if we let people skip past all the copy, they don't actually have enough of the reasons why they should give in the first place. But if you've been cultivating them well over the course of the season, they understand the reasons why they should give. We're trying to make the process easier. Giving them this start my gift button during the last week allows them to jump straight to the giving form and actually give. And in this case, it led to a 51% increase in donations for mobile users specifically, not for desktop, but for mobile. So that's maybe a little bit more technical, but something to kind of keep in the back of your mind throughout the season. Jessica, again, y'all can make this stuff happen.
We can. So some of those things you would implement on your website, right? Of the giving page of your website. But as a reminder, what's even easier and faster is that you can implement some of these changes directly on your donation form through your Amplify or Ministry Brands giving portal. So the forms are so easy to customize, y'all, and you can actually create different types of giving forms. So if your year-end campaign looks a little bit different than your rest of the year campaign, I would highly encourage you to either create a new form or update your existing form to match the language that you've been using for this campaign specifically. So in this visual example here, we've got the same campaign shown on 3 different types of forms. So you can make this look however you want. You can use amount buttons. You could do a pledge card, which is what's there in the middle, or we have a brand new form that we've created actually with the research that we received in our partnership with Next After called our Express Giving Form. You can find it within your platform right now. You just toggle it on and it's fantastic. And then also you will receive in your email, your follow-up email, a couple of free resources. You can scan this QR code if you want them right now and you don't want to wait for the email, but we will also include those resources in your email. And then what's the last slide? I think the last slide is you, Nathan, right?
Yes. We have a short little, we've been calling it a micro course. We have a full course. It's about 4 hours long. It dives deep into year-end fundraising. We also have this like little mini course. It's 5 lessons. It's totally free, but walks through in a little bit more detail some things we've talked about today, but also goes deeper into like building out your full year-end email campaign and things like that. So you can go check this out. It's called the Year End Fundraising Accelerator. I apparently wore the same shirt as I'm wearing today, which is kind of fun. Anyway, I didn't plan. I don't even wear the shirt that often, but that's just how it worked out. So that's just funny. Makes me laugh today. But go scan this QR code. You can go sign up for this course for free as well. If you want to get a little bit deeper insight into other things you might test and try this season. I think we have 4 minutes for some questions if there are questions.
Yeah, I'm also just really quickly going to plug something else as questions are coming in, but we just did another webinar on how to build a culture of generosity at your ministry. So Nathan's talking about cultivating that, making sure people understand why they should trust you with their money. I think that is a really important piece of this. And so if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about that, we've got a Healthy Church Hub on our Ministry Brands website. So feel free to go there. We've got so many amazing resources, but that webinar is live there if you're interested in watching that as well. So any questions? I am looking, one of these is a little bit more technical. Luann, your question's a little bit more technical. Any other incentive ideas other than gift matching?
Yeah, good one. I've been thinking about that for a second. I mean, most of the incentives you see during the season are matching opportunities. Other incentives, I guess I'll start here. One thing I would suggest you don't lean into, which is always tempting, is like the tax deduction piece. It's really easy to lean into that, but it's not really an incentive when everyone else can claim the same sort of thing. So definitely don't put your eggs in the tax deduction basket, because I don't think it's actually helping. Other things to consider though is, are there other kinds of free resources and free tools that you might give away, whether it's a PDF download of a Bible study type of thing, or any other kind of resources, training resources your church might have, or maybe it's even a physical one. Hey, when you give, we're going to send you kind of this free book or this free resource. Maybe you go buy a batch of books from a relevant author who's talking about a topic that you're currently talking about at your church through a sermon series, and you go give those away to people who give in a certain time frame. So I don't know exactly, but you can kind of be creative with how do you give people something of value, just as that means of kind of getting them over the hump and jumping over that hurdle of actually giving.
Well, and two, if another donor is willing to donate, like for example, if a member of your board has, and I'm thinking more nonprofit here, has a box suite at a stadium or something, if that's a fun incentive, you can say, hey, the first person to give in the next 10 minutes will win a box seats to the next hockey game or whatever. I think prizes too can be fun. It seems to work a little bit better with a live audience, but I think that could be fun too if you're using social media. I don't know, that's just a thought, an actual prize.
Yeah, little giveaways like that, that's really fun. Let us know what you come up with too in terms of those incentives, because as specifically in the my brain goes to all the kind of different nonprofits that we work with. Specifically in the church camp though, I mean, just any kind of those resources that just help build people's faith or understanding of scripture, that seems like that might be kind of the sweet spot. But curious what you come up with. Yeah, let's see.
The anonymous attendee question, I will say that's a lot of what we discuss in the other webinar to build a culture of generosity. But this is a huge one for me personally. I don't think as ministries we shy away from talking about giving. I think this is something that should be a normal part of our conversation and our culture. So Nathan, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, promoting monthly giving when we don't always have a project goal, simply a staff funding goal. I mean, I was having a conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago on a podcast about this, and she was asking me what are, from a donor's perspective, what are the reasons why someone would sign up for a monthly gift rather than give a one-time gift? And I do wonder. I mean, there's certainly from the organization side of things, the predictability that comes with monthly giving in order to be able to plan budgets and plan initiatives and that sort of stuff. And so I do wonder if that's even a place you can lean in to talk about. Yes, you can give one time, and that's helpful. But when we can understand the funds that are coming in, it helps us actually be much more strategic about where we're going to invest in the community, where we're going to invest in our church, so we can actually use your money in a more impactful and effective way. So being able to tell that story, even without a specific goal or a giveaway or something, that can go really far. And yes, oftentimes what we see is, people put up a lot of these just like mental hurdles to actually asking for a monthly gift, when in reality, people are willing to if we just ask them and we give them some clear reasons to show why it's meaningful and impactful.
That transparency, I think, transcends across whatever campaign you're doing, whether it's your monthly, your weekly, request for giving. I think that transparency is great and powerful. So we are about out of time, but thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate, this was fantastic. My mind is a little bit blown. You guys were getting the recording. You can take notes. The second time you watch this, I'm going to watch it again. I'm definitely going to recommend even our team members watch this because it's extremely valuable information, and we coach you all. So it's good for us to know. So Nathan, thanks again, guys. Look out for those resources. You get like 30 more seconds to scan this QR code to watch the year-end fundraising accelerator. Otherwise, you will get access to those resources in your follow-up emails. Go and raise money. You guys are going to do awesome. We really appreciate your time, Nathan. I hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Best of luck to you. And Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.